Have you ever had a moment that completely changed the trajectory of your life? A chance encounter that seemed insignificant at first but ended up rewriting your entire future? If you're nodding right now, this story will resonate deep in your soul. If you haven't, well, you're about to understand how it feels. Before we dive in, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to see more stories like this one. It was nearly midnight when Jack Sullivan found her. The rain was coming down in sheets, the kind that soaked you to the bone within seconds. He was exhausted after his double shift at the diner, his mind focused only on getting home to his sleeping 7-year-old daughter, Emma. The babysitter would be anxious to leave, and Jack couldn't afford to pay her overtime. Not this month. Not any month, really. That's when he spotted the figure slumped against the wall in the alley beside his apartment building. At first, he thought it was just another homeless person seeking shelter from the downpour. God knows there were enough of them in this part of the city. Jack almost walked past, he had his own problems to deal with. But something made him stop. Maybe it was the expensive-looking high heels scattered nearby, or the fact that the woman's clothes, though soaked, were clearly high-end. "Hey," Jack called out, approaching cautiously. "Are you okay?" The woman lifted her head slightly, her mascara running down her cheeks in dark rivulets. Her eyes, though unfocused, were a striking emerald green. "Go away," she slurred, waving a manicured hand dismissively. The movement caused her to lose what little balance she had, and she nearly toppled over. Jack sighed. She was clearly drunk, possibly drugged. He should just walk away. It wasn't his problem. The babysitter was waiting. Emma needed him. His life was complicated enough without adding a drunk stranger to the mix. "Do you have someone I can call?" he asked, already regretting the decision to stop. The woman fumbled with her purse, expensive and now ruined by the rain, before dropping it. The contents spilled across the wet pavement. Jack knelt down to help gather her things, a designer wallet, a smartphone with a cracked screen, a set of keys with a luxury car logo. "I don't need your help," she snapped, though her words were so slurred they barely made sense. "Just walk away, idiot." Those words should have been enough to make Jack leave. He had been called worse, but still, he didn't need this abuse from a stranger. Yet something in her eyes, a flash of vulnerability beneath the anger, made him stay. "Look, you can't stay out here in this rain. You'll get sick, or worse." Jack glanced at his watch. The babysitter was definitely going to charge him extra now. The woman tried to stand but immediately stumbled. Jack caught her before she hit the ground. Up close, he could smell the expensive perfume beneath the scent of alcohol. Despite her disheveled appearance, there was no mistaking the air of authority she carried, even in this state. "I'm taking you inside to sober up," Jack said firmly. "Then you can call someone to pick you up." "Don't tell me what to do," she mumbled, but she didn't resist as he helped her to her feet and guided her toward his building. Jack's apartment was on the 3rd floor, and the elevator had been out of service for weeks. Half carrying, half dragging the woman up the stairs was no easy feat. By the time they reached his door, they were both breathing heavily. The babysitter, Melissa, a college student from down the hall, opened the door before Jack could even find his keys. Her expression shifted from annoyance to confusion when she saw the woman leaning against him. "Sorry I'm late," Jack whispered, trying not to wake Emma. "Emergency situation." Melissa raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Jack paid her the agreed amount plus extra for the late hour, wincing as he handed over the cash that had been earmarked for Emma's new winter coat. After Melissa left, Jack helped the woman to the couch. His apartment was small, just a living room that doubled as his bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and Emma's room. It was clean but worn, with second-hand furniture and walls that needed a fresh coat of paint. Nothing like what this woman was probably used to. "I'm going to get you some water and aspirin," Jack said, setting her down carefully. "Try not to make too much noise. My daughter is sleeping." The woman looked around the apartment with unfocused eyes. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice slightly clearer now. "My place. You were passed out in the alley. I couldn't just leave you there." She frowned, as if trying to process this information through the alcohol fog. "Why not? Everyone else would have." Jack didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he went to the kitchen and filled a glass with water. When he returned, the woman had kicked off her remaining shoe and was attempting to remove her wet blazer. Jack set down the water and helped her, noticing for the first time the designer label inside. "What's your name?" he asked, handing her the water and 2 aspirin. She hesitated, as if debating whether to tell him. "Alexandra," she finally said. "Alexandra Winters." The name sounded vaguely familiar, but Jack couldn't place it. "I'm Jack Sullivan. Drink this. It'll help with the hangover you're going to have." Alexandra took the pills and drank the water in one long gulp. "Do you have anything stronger?" she asked, a hint of her earlier arrogance returning. "I think you've had enough for one night," Jack replied, taking the empty glass. "I'll get you a blanket and a pillow. You can sleep on the couch and figure things out in the morning." As Jack turned to leave, Alexandra grabbed his wrist. Her touch was surprisingly gentle. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice suddenly small. Jack looked down at her hand, then back at her face. The makeup had smeared further, revealing a bruise forming near her temple. He hadn't noticed it before. "Are you hurt? Did someone do that to you?" Alexandra touched her temple, wincing slightly. "I fell. Or maybe someone pushed me. I don't remember." She laughed bitterly. Pathetic, right? The great Alexandra Winters, drunk and lost in some random part of the city. There it was again, that name, spoken as if he should recognize it. Jack shook his head. "Get some rest. We'll sort it out tomorrow." He retrieved a blanket and pillow from the closet and helped Alexandra settle on the couch. She was asleep almost instantly, her breathing deep and even. Jack stood watching her for a moment, wondering what series of events had led someone like her to end up in his alley on this particular rainy night. With a sigh, Jack settled into the recliner across from the couch. It wasn't the first time he'd given up his makeshift bed for someone else. As a single father working 2 jobs to make ends meet, comfort was a luxury he rarely experienced anyway. Morning came too quickly. Jack woke to the sound of Emma's voice, unusually hushed but still audible. "Daddy, there's a princess on our couch." Jack opened his eyes to see his daughter standing beside the recliner, still in her pajamas, her curly hair a wild mess around her face. She was pointing at Alexandra, who remained asleep, though her position had shifted during the night. "She's not a princess, sweetie," Jack whispered, sitting up and stretching his stiff muscles. "She's just someone who needed help last night." Emma tilted her head, studying the sleeping woman. "She looks like a princess. Like in my books." Jack had to admit there was something regal about Alexandra, even in her current state. Her features were delicate yet strong, her long dark hair fanned out across the pillow. "Let's let her sleep," Jack said, standing and guiding Emma toward the kitchen. "How about some breakfast before school?" They were halfway through their cereal when a groan came from the living room. Jack glanced at the clock. He had about 30 minutes before he needed to walk Emma to school, then head straight to his morning shift at the diner. "Stay here," he told Emma, who nodded solemnly, her spoon halfway to her mouth. Alexandra was sitting up on the couch, her head in her hands. She looked up as Jack approached, her eyes narrowed against the morning light streaming through the window. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "My apartment. You were drunk in an alley last night. I brought you here to sober up." Recognition slowly dawned on her face, followed by embarrassment and then, surprisingly, anger. "You should have called me a cab or something. Not brought me to this place." The disdain in her voice when she said, "this place," made Jack's jaw tighten. "You're welcome," he said flatly. "There's aspirin on the table and water in the kitchen. Feel free to call yourself a cab now that you're sober enough to remember your address." Alexandra stood, swaying slightly. "I don't need your charity or your judgment. Just walk away, idiot. That's what I told you last night, right?" Jack stared at her, incredulous. "Yes, that's exactly what you said. Right before you passed out and I carried you up 3 flights of stairs instead of leaving you to get robbed or worse." A small voice interrupted their tense exchange. "Daddy, is the princess mad?" Both adults turned to see Emma standing in the doorway, her cereal bowl clutched in her small hands. Her eyes were wide as she looked between her father and Alexandra. Alexandra's expression softened immediately. "No, sweetheart. I'm not mad. I'm just not feeling well this morning." Emma nodded knowingly. "Like when Daddy has a headache after he drinks his special juice with Uncle Mike." Jack felt his face heat up. "Emma, go finish your breakfast. We need to leave for school soon." Emma lingered for a moment, her eyes still on Alexandra. "You're very pretty, even if you're not a princess." A genuine smile broke through Alexandra's hangover grimace. "Thank you. You're very pretty too." After Emma returned to the kitchen, Alexandra's smile faded. She looked around the apartment with new eyes, taking in the worn furniture, the patched walls, the toys neatly organized in a corner of the living room. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "That was uncalled for. Thank you for helping me last night." Jack nodded, accepting her apology but still wary. "There's coffee in the kitchen if you want some. I need to get Emma ready for school." Alexandra followed him into the small kitchen, where Emma was finishing her cereal. The domestic scene seemed to unsettle Alexandra further. She stood awkwardly by the counter as Jack poured her a cup of coffee. "Black okay?" he asked. "Yes, thank you." She accepted the mug, her hands trembling slightly. "I should call my driver." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Your driver?" Alexandra pulled out her phone, which miraculously still had some battery life. "Yes, my driver. I'm the CEO of Winters Enterprises. I have a car and driver on call." Now Jack understood why her name had sounded familiar. Winters Enterprises was one of the largest tech companies in the country. Their logo was plastered on billboards throughout the city. And this woman, this disheveled, hungover woman standing in his kitchen, was its leader. "You're that Alexandra Winters?" he asked, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. She nodded, wincing at the movement. "The one and only. Though not usually in such a state, I assure you." Emma looked up from her bowl. "Are you famous?" Alexandra smiled again, that genuine smile that transformed her face. "Some people might think so, but I'm just someone who runs a big company." "Bigger than Daddy's diner?" Emma asked innocently. "Emma, Ms. Winters is busy. Go brush your teeth and get dressed for school," Jack interjected, feeling suddenly self-conscious about their modest life. After Emma left, an uncomfortable silence filled the kitchen. Alexandra sipped her coffee, grimacing at either the taste or her headache. "So," Jack finally said, "want to tell me how the CEO of a Fortune 500 company ended up drunk in an alley in this neighborhood?" Alexandra set down her mug. "Not particularly, no." She tapped at her phone, presumably messaging her driver. "He'll be here in 15 minutes. I should clean up a bit, if that's possible." Jack pointed her toward the bathroom, a cramped space with barely enough room to turn around. "Towels are on the rack. There's a new toothbrush in the drawer, Emma's dentist gives us extras." While Alexandra freshened up, Jack helped Emma get ready for school. He tried to explain to his curious daughter that their guest was just someone who needed help, not someone who would be a regular part of their lives. Emma seemed disappointed but accepted his explanation with the resilience of childhood. By the time Alexandra emerged from the bathroom, Jack and Emma were ready to leave. Alexandra looked marginally better, her face washed clean of makeup, her hair combed with her fingers, her clothes still wrinkled but no longer soaking wet. "My driver is downstairs," she announced, checking her phone again. "I should go." Jack nodded, relieved that this strange interlude was coming to an end. "Right. Well, good luck with everything." Alexandra hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "If you ever need anything, a job, or help with." She glanced at Emma, who was watching them with undisguised interest. "Just call this number. It's my private line." Jack took the card automatically but shook his head. "We're fine, thanks. I don't need charity either." Alexandra's eyes flashed with something, hurt, perhaps, or frustration. "It's not charity. It's gratitude. You helped me when you didn't have to. When most people wouldn't have." Before Jack could respond, Emma tugged at his hand. "Daddy, we'll be late for school." Alexandra smiled at Emma one last time. "It was nice to meet you, Emma. Thank you for letting me stay on your couch." Emma beamed. "You're welcome. Are you going back to your castle now?" Alexandra laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even her. "Something like that." They all left the apartment together, Jack locking the door behind them. The elevator was still out of service, so they descended the stairs in single file, Jack first, then Emma, with Alexandra bringing up the rear. Outside, a sleek black car was idling at the curb, looking completely out of place in the rundown neighborhood. A uniformed driver stood beside it, his expression carefully neutral as he took in Alexandra's appearance. "Ms. Winters," he said, opening the rear door. Alexandra turned to Jack and Emma one last time. "Thank you again. Both of you." Jack nodded, still uncomfortable with the whole situation. "Take care of yourself." As Alexandra slid into the back seat, Emma called out, "Bye, Princess Alexandra." The car pulled away from the curb, leaving Jack and Emma standing on the sidewalk. Jack slipped the business card into his pocket, certain he would never use it. Some worlds were just too different to intersect for long. "Come on, kiddo," he said, taking Emma's hand. "Let's get you to school." Life returned to normal after that strange night. Jack continued his routine of working at the diner during the day and a bar at night, with occasional weekend shifts at a local warehouse when they needed extra hands. Emma went to school, had playdates with neighbors' children, and grew another inch seemingly overnight, making her winter clothes from last year too small. The business card remained in Jack's wallet, a reminder of that bizarre encounter. Sometimes, when money was particularly tight, he would take it out and look at it, wondering what would happen if he called. But pride always stopped him. He had managed on his own since Emma's mother left them 3 years ago. They weren't thriving, perhaps, but they were surviving. It was nearly a month later when Jack saw Alexandra again. He was working the morning shift at the diner, running on 4 hours of sleep after a late night at the bar. The breakfast rush was in full swing, and Jack was juggling 3 tables' orders when the bell above the door chimed. He glanced up automatically and nearly dropped the coffee pot he was holding. Alexandra Winters stood in the doorway, looking nothing like the disheveled woman he had rescued. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her makeup subtle but perfect. She wore a tailored pantsuit that probably cost more than Jack's monthly rent. "What can I get you?" Jack asked, his tone professional. Alexandra looked up, a small smile playing at her lips. "Hello to you too, Jack." He sighed, relaxing his stance slightly.